Welcome to TSNN's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar will answer the probing question of what do Gen X and Gen Y want from our shows. Traci will answer questions during the last 15 minutes of our webinar, so please join in. Alternatively, you can join the conversation and ask questions on Twitter using hashtag TSNNwebinar at any time. Now, Arlene Shows, Marketing Manager for TSNN, would like to say a few words.
Welcome, everyone. Today at TSNN, we are ready to be enlightened on what Generation X and Y want from our shows and events. And to help us get in the know, we welcome Traci Browne, so thanks for tuning in. A big thanks to our sponsors today, MCCA, Advantage Boston, and OnStream Media. They both continue to help us deliver these educational topics to you free of charge. All TSNN webinars, as a matter of fact, are brought to you by OnStream Media, the leader in multimedia webinar and webcasting services. OnStream Media is a leading online service provider of corporate audio and web communications, including webinar and webcasting services. OnStream Media's innovative webinar platform, Visual Webcaster 4.0, allows event managers to easily produce, schedule, and invite attendees to highly interactive, live, and on-demand webinars that can be accessed via a desktop or a mobile device. No downloads are ever required, and the solution can scale to support tens of thousands of attendees. The platform has recently been ranked number 1 by top 10 reviews and is being used to power today's event. To learn more about OnStream products, please visit onstreammedia.com. Another round of thanks goes out to Advantage Boston, the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. They own and they operate the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center and the Heinz Convention Center. Being from the same area, I can tell you firsthand they represent all of the unique benefits and advantages of bringing an event to Boston, including state-of-the-art facilities, first-class hotels, unique history and culture, and top-notch services, including free Wi-Fi throughout the BCEC and the Heinz. Now allow me to introduce our speaker today, Traci Browne. She is a self-described trade show geek. She has owned and produced conferences and expos. She's a freelance content marketer and consults to exhibitors and show organizers to create events people want to attend. You can learn more about her on Traci Browne, that's Traci spelled with an I, and Brown ending in an E, and on Twitter at Traci Browne. Can't wait to get started. Traci, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and this is exciting for me. I'm usually listening in on these TSNN webinars, so it's fun to be able to be an active participant in it this time. So I'm going to get started by introducing our panelists today. We're going to be talking about what do Gen X and Gen Y want from our trade shows. Our first panelist that I want to introduce is Beth Brodowski. She's the president of Iris Creative. As a president of Iris Creative Group, Beth helps member-based organizations use communication to build involved communities, schools, associations, clubs, and nonprofits. Look to Iris to develop brand and ongoing communications that encourages members to stay, spend, and bring their friends. Beth is here today representing our Gen Y generation, Gen X generation. Right, Beth?
I wish.
So, yeah, I'm asking you to represent not the entire generation, but just yourself in that role.
Absolutely.
And next up we have Denise Capello. She's the Business Development Manager for Amsterdam RAI. And Denise has 10 years of trade show experience and has taken her shows all over the world. Every bit of experience is taken into account when developing new propositions for international exhibit organizers at Amsterdam RAI. I've asked Denise to come on today because Amsterdam RAI put out a great study recently on what Gen X and Gen Y want from our shows, and that is actually available to you on the webinar. If you look down below the slides, you're going to see a button labeled Materials, and you can download that study there. And Arlene's also going to be sending that out after the webinar, after a couple days, a link to that. So if you don't catch it on the download here, you can get it later. So thanks, Denise, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And then we have our Gen Y representative. Antoinette Marie Johnson is the co-founder and CEO of @Media, and so I'm just pulling your bio quick up online. Antoinette was named Entrepreneur to Watch Under 30 by the Philadelphia Business Journal, and that's how I found Antoinette for today. She's also Female Entrepreneur of the Year for Small Business by the International Stevie Awards. And as I said, she's co-founder and CEO of @Media. So thank you, Antoinette, for representing our Gen Y.
Sure thing.
Now, the way we're going to do this today is we're going to talk about the study and some of the results. Denise is going to be sharing those with us. And we're going to do it as a panel discussion type of thing. So I'm just going to ask our Gen X and Gen Y representatives and Denise to comment on some areas of trade shows and what we're looking for. So let's start out. Our first question is, how would you describe trade shows to someone who's never heard of them or been to one? Antoinette, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I often describe trade shows, number one, to clients in a way that they can understand that it's an event with a highly targeted audience seeking to learn more about whatever industry it is that you're representing. And then for the second, obviously the audience member or someone like myself, again, a highly targeted event. So whatever the topic is, you should expect to see vendors that service that industry, and then hopefully if the event has entered the 21st century, some conference-like events. So open panel forums and workshops to learn more about the industry or whatever topics are covered in the trade show itself.
Gotcha. And Beth, how about you? As a Gen Y.
I think actually that description that Antoinette just gave is pretty accurate, that it's an opportunity it sort of combines education and marketplace. You know, a trade show gives someone the opportunity to learn about resources, potentially learn about things that they are either professionally or personally interested in, and then make connections to organizations, companies, consultants to then actually enable or act on those resources to move forward with doing something about the things that either personally interest them or are kind of up on the list of professional needs.
Okay, and how would you, if you were going to describe it visually, like to give somebody a sense of what they're going to see when they walk into a room? How would you describe it visually, Beth?
Okay, so a cavern with lots and lots of rows and booths that are staffed alternately by people who will jump out into an aisle and trip you to catch your attention, or people who are filing their nails.
Okay.
Of that. So, I mean, in general, it's everything from an educational marketplace to a little bit of a carnival.
Okay. And Antoinette, do you have anything different that you feel?
I think that's about right. I would say that to expect to see interactive vendors and displays of either products or whatever the trade show is about, and hopefully lots of other good-looking people to network with.
Okay. And Denise, what did you find in your study, how people, your respondents, reacted to trade shows in general, what that feeling was like?
Well, what you see out of our research is that there's a big difference between the perception of a trade show for Generation X and what there is for Generation Y. If you look at the main characteristics for the two generations, you could in general say that Generation X is more cynical, they're very more pragmatic and family-focused, whereas Generation Y is more me-centric, conscious, smart, and very visual. So what we would recommend is, depending on which target audience you want to reach, is to focus on those characteristics when you describe an exhibition. So actually when we're discussing, okay, we describe it as rows filled with booths and people filing their nails and trip to get their attention, that's actually exactly what we're getting back from Generation Y on how they perceive exhibitors to behave. And they don't experience that necessarily as a positive thing. So there's a learning lesson for us there to change when we're targeting Generation Y. I mean, at the moment you're still seeing that Generation X is the largest population visiting trade shows. But we're seeing more and more Generation Y. We need to see more and more Generation Y over the years. Great. And it was definitely interesting to hear that cynicism in Beth's description. Okay, now what 3 things would drive you to attend a trade show? Antoinette, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, surely. I would say by far, since I'm sort of representing a population of people, if you will, we definitely expect to see more conference-like types of events happening at the event. So panels of speakers who are well experienced in the industry or the topics that are covered, specifically people who have media influence, and hopefully some workshops that get us a little more engaged. So, I don't like to admit, but we are definitely me-centric. So what that means is I want to learn from this event, not just see what types of companies offer services or products within the industry that I'm attending the trade show for, but how can I learn from them and bring that back to my own company? So 2 big things are the more sort of panel-like conference events, then second is the workshops, and then the third is the more interactive displays. One of my favorites that we did with a client was a climbing wall for PNC Bank. And we took that message and talked about, climbing the financial hurdles throughout your life, whether that be savings or getting a mortgage. And that interactive component drawed a nice audience who was ready to be engaged about the topic and not so much just pick up a loose leaf piece of paper and learn more. So I
thought that was interesting when we talked and you mentioned that climbing wall, and I thought, that's a completely different type of interaction than what I also fall into the Gen X, what we're used to. I mean, we consider interaction a touch screen.
Yeah, or a QR code, and those sort of things are just the bare minimum to Gen Y audiences. They want to see real creative thought put into how you engage them, because we're the generation who every single brand is trying to get our attention. So if you make it fun for us and not so blatantly a hard sell, you end up appealing to both Gen X and Gen Y, since Gen X really hates the hard sell too.
Right. And Beth, what about you? What are 3 things that would drive you to attend a show?
For me, very much education. And I think one of the things that's, distinctive about many Gen X people is that at the age of a Gen X person, it's a person frequently with a family or, multiple of commitments. So for me, it's, what is going to be, is there someone or something going to be at a show that makes it worth leaving all of the other things, responsibilities and all the stuff that I have to do, leaving my office? Like, why should I go in person to get this education when I can, Google it or do some other way or get a demo online? So I think Gen X people tend to like, also great speakers, but as opposed to somebody that maybe has like a lot of, big name media name, it might be, I think Gen X people still like a big name author or somebody that has, more prestige in the community over a longer period of time, as opposed to, somebody that's, more recently famous or maybe more famous for, higher technology or different things. They want to see
somebody that is a great author, or and it's not always my opinion, but what I've seen a lot at shows is somebody that maybe was a star in a sport or in a TV show or something like that people often want to see. Mm-hmm. So, but definitely like education. But the other thing that I think Gen X people really like as like what they consider fun and engaging. I think if I walked in and saw a climbing wall, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not climbing up that. But networking, talking to each other, the more informal, less structured, meeting new people, connecting with them, talking with them, and that's really useful. And good sessions. I think Gen X people, in my opinion, seem to like an educational, someone's telling me and giving me good information more than an interactive session. In my opinion, I'm not sure that Gen X people like to, get up and move tables and do activities in sections as much as they want to walk away and say, this person was smart and I learned something that I can then take back and do tomorrow because I came.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm hearing both Antoinette and you, Beth, are both saying, I'm hearing education. The format might be different, but definitely you want to learn something. And what did you find, Denise?
Well, actually, we found both, and I can completely confirm with what they've said. Antoinette talking about the panels and the experience and the workshops is what we found in our research, where we say, okay, Gen X is really interested in knowledge and skills. And that's what would drive them to a trade show, if they know that they can get knowledge and skills. And then the other part is that where Gen X looks at exhibitions, Gen Y is looking for an experience and an event, thus a climbing wall. So that would definitely work for a Gen Y. Gen X, as also was discussed, they have a pressure on their time. Gen X has a family, and as an organizer, they want you to understand that there is a pressure because they have a family besides their jobs, and they're looking for that correct balance. So when a Gen Xer is visiting a trade show, they need to make sure that it has the ultimate return on their investment. So sessions need to have a high knowledge level and can't be about moving around, because we have only so much time. We need to get our information now, and this is the specific information that we're looking for. So you need to provide that specific information that they're looking for. That's what I can add to this specific topic.
Great. And sorry about those slides moving around. There was some mystery thing moving them. So we'll move on to the next question. About marketing our trade shows. Show organizers, we do have a lot of competition, and now that we know what would drive you to attend a show, depending on the generation, we want to take a look at what kind of marketing would capture your attention, and how should shows market to you. We're inundated with emails and messages and on our mobile devices, on our desktops, in the mail. Antoinette, what kind of marketing would catch your attention?
Sure. So I think that it's important for my generation to see exactly what they should expect in terms of what type of event it is, and whether or not it's worth them spending the money to come. So basically, the videos and photos I find are the best way to do that. The brand of the event should be sleek and interesting. Consumer Electronics Show is an example of a brand that we've helped, and I think it's a good example of how you can engage folks and market to them. And then the video can sort of be a storytelling tool to feature who you'll see there and what they cover and what types of audiences you'll get the opportunity to network with. I think the imagery says it all, and if we can learn of that via Twitter and YouTube and those types of social media networks, all the better. So we also really like to see a hashtag tag used so that we can advertise to our network that we're going and find out who else is going to meet up at the event and all connect via that hashtag. So some of those are very, very basic, but go a long way when you're trying to capture an audience and get them to attend. I also would like to mention that the price point, I find people my age are more attracted to an event that costs less than $500. And if you price it right, you should get great attendance versus higher and less people going.
That's really interesting. I remember when we talked on the phone and you said that price point. A lot of times we don't think of that as a marketing, a piece of the marketing, the price itself. And also it's interesting that you, part of this marketing, we're trying to figure out how to reach everybody, and you're saying and you want to help advertise the event. Give you ways to share it with your network and your friends and your colleagues.
Oh, certainly. That's why, just during this live webinar right now, I'm live tweeting, and a few others are as well. And so, essentially, I'm advertising TSNN's webinars while engaging with the people that have, opinions too. So it gives your event legs, and to do it from the start is a really good best practice. And one other thing in terms of marketing it, we see a lot of trade shows and conferences and workshops hitting our inbox with email updates. Hey, come join our trade show, come join our conference. And I find that one of the most effective ways to Gen Y and sometimes Gen X too is to have the people involved send more to their personal network and ask them then to share with theirs too if they're interested. So you're getting it from a person rather than constantly from the actual trade show brand.
It's more personalization. Beth, what about you? What kind of marketing catches your attention?
I think that what really captures my attention is definitely knowing who's going. So who's going to be there? Who am I likely to meet? I happen to be, self-employed, so a lot of times, in addition to maybe looking for resources at a conference, I'm also going to network and to see, is there anyone there that I can learn from who might become a resource for me or who would buy from me? So I really like to know who's going to be there. So anything from literally getting an email, like a list of attendees, to being able to join some sort of a forum or a chat or really any sort of social community type thing for the event in advance of the event to get a sense of who's going to be there. I do follow hashtags, and even if I don't always participate in the tweeting, I do always take a look at who's there, what are they saying, what's going on in advance of the show. I also think that I really like educational content. So that's the reason that I'm going to a show. So being able to get a few pieces of that found to be really, really interesting to me. So if there's speakers at an event, having them do a pre-show Twitter talk or a webinar or some get a little taste of what they're going to be talking about gets me really a lot more interested in going to the show. And it also makes me feel like the coordinators or the organizer of the show really are interested in making sure that we get the most out of what's happening there and engaging more in like a more full life cycle of an event. So it's not just like, here's the day of the event, it happens, it's over. It's like that there's, some pre-show bits, education, there's stuff that happens at the show, and then, maybe even things that happen afterwards. So those are the things that really, I think, help me, market to me and really get me interested to see, how much does a show organizer care about my experience and that I'm going to get what I'm coming for.
And you're not just a number and a registration fee.
Yeah, that it's not just like one more admission ticket. And also the other thing, Tracy, I think you and I were actually talking about this a little bit before, was, a lot of times you also feel that the vendors, the people that actually show up at the booths can often matter, because frequently as an attendee it feels like that the people who are at the booths or whoever had their checks clear, who they found out they wanted to come and, sure, there's a spot for you. I realize that shows have to, or a for-profit venture, they have to make a buck, but, to have
if there was any way to curate that a little bit so that there was some conscious alignment between the shows, maybe that the show's coordinators had a little more stake in the game as far as getting vendors that really did seem to make a difference, either by surveying or doing something. And I would think it would be beneficial to vendors as well to get some sort of advance notice of, how many people are really interested in this. I'm sure shows do this kind of a thing. I just may not have been to the kind of one that has.
Mm-hmm. Or it's not obvious enough.
Exactly. It's not obvious enough. Yeah, exactly.
And Denise, what did you find in the study about marketing?
Let me start with Generation Y. So again, I want to go back to those main characteristics of this generation, where we look at the me-centric element. So me-centric is not a negative thing. Me-centric means that this is the generation that was overly protected and spoiled with attention by parents, by school, by the environment. So that creates a different culture, whereas Generation X came from a different background, where they had the baby boomers to compete with, to look up at. Completely different generations. So Generation Y, me-centric, cautious, smart, and then there's the visual culture. So in your marketing, you shouldn't forget this. I mean, this is the generation that prefers YouTube over Google as the search engine. They don't like the boring data transfer, but they are interested in infographics. If you look at their activities online, the most popular activity on Facebook is looking at each other's photos and pictures. So again, that virtual element, because this is a very visual generation. So focus on these visual messages and this identity when you market to them. Another thing that we see is be playful and intelligent with your communication. I mean, for this generation, being smart and having knowledge is cool. Compared to what other generations might think. It's important to think in experiences and events and not in trade shows. I think it's also important to develop a creative and inspiring, iconic visual identity so they can recognize you all throughout your marketing campaign. But it has to be visual, so limit the words. Take out all the words that might not be necessary and add in pictures or videos or anything that triggers the brain in a different perspective. So that's for Generation Y. Then over to, marketing on Generation X. So if we look at
cynical generation.
Yes, the cynical and pragmatic and family focused. And the cynical comes a bit from, this is the generation that feels the impact of the recession the most. So that makes people more cynical, which just means we need to look at a different market strategy for this generation. So the marketing strategy here is practice brutal honesty, basically to battle the cynicism. Play with the cynicism, so use playful communication and products. And more importantly, be transparent. So again, transparency, honesty, with a personal touch. So it's that transfer of information with a personal touch. And then in that information, it's important for this generation to manage their expectations within your marketing strategy. This is also the generation that loves limited editions and basically goes against mass production. But this is the generation of limited editions. I think there's one more thing to add when we look at marketing strategies. It's where it's important within the communication to explain your USPs. And these link back to the return on investment and the decisions when people make if they need to choose for their families or work because of that balance that Generation X is constantly looking for. And then I think I've covered almost everything. There's one more thing. You need to market on both genders because of the different gender roles within this generation. And I think with that, I've covered almost everything that comes out of our research looking into different market strategies for these generations.
That's really interesting. I've never heard anybody mention marketing to different genders.
No, and basically
sort of
what they mean is don't forget. Yes, and that's where, for example, what you say, if we look at our own show, if we look at our car show, you get the feedback from women saying, but hey, wait a second, I like cars, I like gadgets, why is the show marketed to men? And that's what we're used to doing. But especially women in these generations love the gadgets. So it's very easy to adjust your marketing proposition to make sure that you market to them as well. And the other way around to men, where in Generation X they're more in touch with their feminine side, and that's also not a negative thing.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like we're lining up pretty well with our panel answers and our study. And I just want to repeat again for people that might have jumped on late, that study that Denise is talking about by Amsterdam RAI is located, if you want to download that, it's located, there's a button underneath the slides that you'll see called Materials, and you can use that to download that report. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
Yeah, Denise, this is Antoinette from @Media. I wanted to say thanks for that report. I found it useful in a variety of ways. Are we allowed to share it online, like via Twitter or LinkedIn?
No, but everybody can request it through RAI Marketing at rai.nl.
Can you spell that?
Yes, that's RAI and then marketing at rai.nl. And then we can share the full insight. I mean, the research element that's on here is the short version. It's the summary. Mm-hmm. There's a full research with it, which is quite a bit more extensive. And people can get in touch with us, and we can share that information, of course.
And notice how Antoinette wants to share it with her network. Okay, next question. We talked about, what are the three things that you want to get from a show that would make you attend. But we also got into a little bit about, there's this competition. There's so many events going on, whether it's a trade show or a conference or a local event. Beth, I'll first go to you. What influences your decision to go to one event over another? I mean, given that both you and Antoinette have small businesses, so, budget's a thing and budget's something with everybody. You can't go to everything. What influences your decision to choose a show over another?
That's a really great question because I run a small business, so I usually have only two reasons. One, it's either one or the other or both that I would even go to a show, no matter what cool place it is in or what fabulous hotel it might be at. I either am going to network and generate business, like make connections with people who I think can actually become clients and further my business, or I'm going to learn something that I think that I'll learn it the best there, that maybe because of the ability to be out of my office and immerse myself in a topic that I can learn it, or because the expertise that is pulled together in a certain organization is available at this conference, or something like that. So I either have to think, if I go to this, I'm going to learn something faster or better than I could in a different way of learning something, or I'm going to go to this and have the opportunity to get connected with people who can further my business in some way.
And then that goes back then to what we were talking earlier about the importance in the marketing to let you know who's going to be at the show and to let you know what you're going to be learning more than just, your agenda with a short description of what that session is.
Exactly, and it's not even just that. So there's all these speakers. A lot of, I want to really be able to, who's this speaker? Who is this person? Are they somebody that really is an expert? Have I heard of the company that they work for? What does that company do? Are they somebody that really, am I going to get something better by having the opportunity to hear them speak and talk about their ideas than I can get from following their blog or looking at their videos or doing any of the other content marketing that individual is doing? And so a show that really pulls together a panel of true industry experts in a way that you think this is really that's unique and an opportunity. That's what interests me in saying that's worth, getting on a plane and missing out on a few days of work here.
Gotcha. And how about you, Antoinette?
Yeah, I would say all of those I completely agree with, and I would say I also personally look for any media relationships that could be built out of the event. Most recently, I went to a women's entrepreneur trade show in New York City, and there were over 20 reputable media contacts that, based on the video from the marketing of the event, I could tell I would have the opportunity to interact with face-to-face. And for business owners in particular, it's great to have the opportunity to not only, of course, build great connections, but then potentially get some opportunities to pitch stories and follow up with that media opportunity afterwards. So having media people involved at some level, even if it's just covering the event itself, is always an attraction for me.
So hopefully our trade show organizers listening in right now are catching that media is something that we don't normally promote in our shows actively. I mean, we invite them, but we don't use it as a marketing tool. And Denise, what have? Oh, go ahead. Who was that? Who did I just cut off?
Yeah, this is Antoinette. I actually was at a health fair this weekend, and they didn't advertise that a major news reporter would be there and interacting with a lot of the attendees until you actually got to the event. They had like a printout with her picture and said she'd be joining us at 2:30 p.m., and that would have probably attracted a lot more Gen Yers initially. And what's funny is that I would say at least 80% of the crowd were senior citizens. So obviously they didn't market well to the Gen Y or Gen X.
And Denise, do you want to add to that what you found?
Well, I can basically just add on the Generation Y, where they would select one show over the other, is the Generation Y would love the possibility to co-create. So if you give them the feeling that they're building this together with you, for example, with a raffle saying, help us design this stand, or design the stage set, make our communication, or even simpler, upload your photos for our visuals before or after the event, and you use them for the next edition. Votings are popular for Gen Y. So if you have these elements in your exhibition over all the other elements that we've just discussed already, that could maybe help them choose your show over the other.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability and greening our events. For a while, it was a very popular term. We tended to greenwash all our events, saying let's make them paperless, and that trade shows are not exactly the greenest of events. But how important is that to the different generations? And Antoinette, I'll start with you on this one.
Okay, yeah, Tracy, we had a long discussion about this. That I sort of feel strongly, and I feel uncomfortable a bit representing a whole generation, but seeing as though that we do market research all the time, too, I feel a little more comfortable, and that everybody on this webinar, I hope, knows that, of course, there is always personal opinion involved. But in terms of green marketing for Gen Y, we would prefer that you don't advertise how green you are and that you let us experience that at the event itself. And so one big piece of that when it comes to trade shows and events like this type of nature is the swag or the branded materials that you give us to take away. We're sick of the drawstring bag and the pens and the paperweights and all the things that it seems brands think we want, and we certainly do not. We want, if at all we want to take away something, we want it to either be educational, like Beth and Denise have said, or we want it to be something super neat and something that speaks to the personality of your brand. And I've had a hard time with my clients trying to get them out of the norm here and think of things that are outside of the box. So, again, going back to the interactive display as a way to experience your brand rather than all of the takeaways. So, for example, we had a green building client at a trade show. We did an interactive green wall where we had people write on the wall, like the world famous "Before I Die, I will do blank," and everybody fills in the blanks. We did things like that and asked people to answer what things matter to them in terms of sustainability, like how do they get to work every day and what would they do with $100 energy savings per month. And the way that it was set up made it so that people really got to experience the brand rather than 100 takeaways that end up in the trash can. And so talking about sustainability in a way that it's the experience and not just what you do to be a quote-unquote green brand.
Gotcha. So you're looking for the show, the organizer to show, not tell, and the exhibitor is not to rely on all those yo-yos and squeeze balls.
Yes, exactly.
Beth, how about you? Do you like your yo-yos and your squeeze balls?
You know, it's funny. Personally, I don't, but what I see a lot in my generation is the family thing. Everybody wants all the yo-yos and squeeze balls, so they come up to them saying, "Can I take two because I have twins?" You know, so they do still tend to like all the tchotchkes because you're coming home to kids and want to bring stuff home. However, as somebody that has exhibited at shows, the idea that I'm spending all this money on tchotchkes so that your 2-year-old twins can play with them, you know, there's not a lot of business value in creating stuff that isn't going to have a business use. I think that it also sort of falls a little bit on the generation's cynicalness that, you know, I'm probably not speaking for my generation, but for myself, you know, when there's a lot of heavy emphasis on the platitudes of sustainability, please, you know, we didn't send you the slides because we want to be greener. I think people in my generation are like, yeah, right. You know, you didn't send me the slides because it's too expensive and all that stuff out. It's money saving, not necessarily. I think that my generation questions what's the word I'm looking for? Questions the reasoning behind are we really being green for green's sake, or are we being green for money's sake? That being said, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish.
So one of the things that I think people in my generation do really pay attention to is just sort of overall, like, recycling. Like, for me personally, I know, you know, to go to a conference and get a big binder, like a big plastic giant binder that takes up a lot of space, and then you've got to deal with this thing, it is annoying. To go and not have recyclable containers that you can throw plastic bottles into, to not be able to recycle the materials that are used. I don't mind usage of it. I just mind waste of it. And so that's where all the tchotchkes and all that stuff does come into that. And so many of them really, I would agree, we don't need another pen. Coming up with something that is valuable and useful and connects you to the brand is fabulous. It is challenging, though.
And Denise, did you uncover anything about that in your study? I know you talked about the importance of transparency, which gets at some of Beth's, you know, why are you really doing this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why basically we found that both generations are conscious about the environment. Generation Y is just a bit more conscious about this. But it has boundaries. So doing good should be easy. For example, so there's an example of the engagement levels, you know, how you need to be able to do it quick. Then, especially when targeting females, you see that women give more to charity than men do, actually, across any income level. Doing good should also be fun. So again, this is all Generation Y. It should be fun. And what's different from what Antoinette said is that we found that it is important to share your sustainability policy. Especially in the workforce. So that goes further than what we're discussing today. Today we're specifically discussing trade shows. But if you look at the workforce now, that people are expecting that you have a sustainability strategy as a company. Now, what I don't know if there is maybe a cultural difference here as well, where there could be a difference in developed countries compared to other countries on their view on sustainability within the generations. But again, that's a different discussion. Now, if we look at sustainable products, Generation Y is for less plastic, less papers. They're very annoyed by flyers and leaflets on the floor. They think that's really a waste of paper. They're all for electric vehicles. They're all for tap water, but all presented in a creative and great marketing way.
Hi. Now, I had a couple more questions, but I noticed now we have some questions from the audience. So I think we're going to skip my questions and go in the last 10 minutes hit some of these audience questions. So the first one here is Courtney Stanley's asking, how does Gen X feel about event apps? And she says, I know Gen Y loves them. So, but I'm going to ask both Antoinette and Beth just to make sure. But Beth, how do you feel about event apps? Do you know what an event app is?
Oh, absolutely. So I can't say, I don't know for a fact whether I am a representative of my generation. I am in marketing. I teach social media. I am a Apple product addict. I love gadgets, technology, and I'm constantly trying to learn what's next. So I don't know if I am, representative for my culture in that, my sort of age or area. But, yeah, what I like is a really good event app. What I hate is a really stupid or useless event app. And I wish they could all read my mind and do exactly what I want them to do, which probably is impossible. I've been, I really love being able to use the event app to remind myself what room a session is going to be and what's coming up next. It's so much easier to have the speaker bio and the session description for the next session on my phone rather than lugging a big booklet around. I hate that. So I really do love that. When they're hard to navigate, or if I can't find the information that I want, it can be a lot of trouble. Actually, my very favorite one wasn't for a trade show. It was actually for an outdoor exhibit at an arboretum once. What I loved best about it is, as we were walking through this event, this exhibit, I was able to click through and learn about what I was seeing, but there were also links to what created it, like the backstory, how this was built, how it was installed, where else pieces like this exist in the world. I was able to not just have my experience that I was having at the show, I was able to learn to what led up to it and then connect me after I left. And I remember thinking, well, if I could have that experience in a business or a trade show experience, that would be fabulous.
So to have the app actually help educate you, which is one of the...
Exactly, as opposed to just tell me, here are the 3 sessions you can go to next. What else? To actually make it an actual, I can learn more. Instead, I find mostly that trade show or event apps are pretty much, it's like the guidebook of what room things are in and who's talking next in a digital form. So it's really fundamentally like a brochure site. It's like an old website from 10 years ago when it was just, I took this brochure and I put it online so that you could then navigate your way to where you want it to be. Whereas the current state of the general internet and the web is content marketing and connections and links from this to this and links from person to person. And I feel that event apps have not yet taken the same leap as the general other online communications have.
Antoinette, what about you? Are you familiar with the event apps?
Well, I really hate to admit it, but Beth said everything perfectly well. I'm just kidding. No, you totally nailed it all on the head. And I would agree. I would say that 100%, if you're going to do it, it has to be done right. And it's pretty easy to mobilize your event, even the pre-event in terms of having a mobile site and a video that's optimized for mobile view, all those easy things, because let's face it, over 50% of traffic now, especially Gen Y, is coming to you from a mobile device. But then actually, event app, meaning at the event or on site, we've used a couple of applications, but I found Event Mobi, so event mobile but without the LE at the end, to be fantastic. And it's really ironic that Beth used the Arboretum example, because we just hosted a event at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, and we used Event Mobi to do exactly what you said, like an interactive brochure. So a map of all the day's events. You could click on things in the app, the map itself, and get more information. You could poll and survey your audience, like live time, and even sort of give access to documents like this slideshow we're talking about now, for example, to easily download onto your devices. I found that application to be incredibly useful, and so if you're going to do it right, and make sure that your time's well spent. And if you're not going to do it at all, at least make your pre-event stuff mobilized.
And Denise, did you find anything? Did you ask about event apps at all, specifically?
Well, yes, we had event apps. If you look at Generation Y, for Generation Y, it's important to personalize things as much as possible. So what you can do there with using apps is that you offer them a custom product. You could, for example, create an app that creates a walking route at the event tailored to their specific needs. But this is a generation. If we look at Generation Y, which is the age between 20 and 35 years old, this generation grew up with technology. They understand this completely. Generation X is the age range of 35 to 50. So when developing apps for this generation, everybody goes with the time. So we all understand apps, and we all like apps because it makes life easier. But they can't be too complicated. So they need to be hands-on to help Generation X find their way around.
Yeah, I noticed that's the frustration that I have sometimes. It's just not intuitive for me. I didn't grow up with the mobile device, but I think I'm okay with it. But I like it to be very intuitive, and as soon as it doesn't work the way I want it to, then I get frustrated and I stick it in my pocket.
Yeah.
So, and then we have another question here, and I don't know the answer to this, and it's from Courtney again. How can we improve intergenerational interaction at our trade shows? So how do we get Beth and Antoinette hanging out together at a trade show and talking? Anybody want to jump on that one?
Yes, it's Denise. Well, if you look at the specific elements, so Generation Y is looking for knowledge. Generation X wants to share that knowledge because that proves that we can do what the baby boomers did as well. So I think that's where you can get them together. It's really going to be on that network and on the knowledge element of it. So for Generation Y, it's important that they know a lot of people. For Generation X, it's important that they know the right people. But if you can find a good mix between the two, you can actually get them together. But I do believe that if I merge these two outcomes from the research, that it's going to be on the knowledge level.
Okay. And Beth, with that in mind, a lot of times our conferences and shows have, first-time attendee programs where they hook up somebody with a mentor that may have been there for a while. Is that something that you would be interested in doing, being a mentor?
Yeah, actually, I've never seen anything like that, but I have done some things at lots of different shows, especially ones where I speak a lot at shows. And a new thing that I'm seeing is that they're doing some pre-conference or in the interstitial times between things, they'll set up, a little mentoring session. So I've done it in like a big room that has lots of little tiny tables in it, where I sit at a table, for, maybe 2 hours and have, little 15-minute appointments where people come in and can ask questions of expertise, and they do that at the show, which I really love, because then, if I see 4 or 5 different people of all ages, that's 4 or 5 people that know me and that I know them. It's a very personal, one-on-one way to get to know a few of the people that are at the show, so that 3 hours later, when you have to sit down at lunch, I'm not a great example because I'm a raging extrovert, but a lot of people, I think, in the Generation X world are maybe less reluctant to just plunk themselves down next to a total stranger of any age and start up a conversation. So, opportunities like that where people can get to know each other. And just something that I personally am a big advocate of is that, I don't know if it's true from the research, but I think that people of the Generation X era need to also realize that, we're not the only ones, that just because we have experience or age or history, that there's things that you can learn from a younger generation too. And people of a younger generation in the Gen Y area, also sort of need to learn that, maybe people in the Gen X or older generations aren't as technology connected, that there's other things that may have value. So any opportunities where the different generations can learn to connect and value and think that the other one has something to offer, it would be a great thing to kind of figure. I wish I had the answer to that. I don't, but I think that we have to, as all generations, need to keep pushing value that each generation contributes to the work.
Okay, and unfortunately, Antoinette, we ran out of time.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say alcoholic beverages.
There you go. There we go. Hey, that's something we can agree on, Gen Y and Gen X.
There you go.
So I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Our panelists, Denise, Antoinette, and Beth, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to those of you who are listening in. Thank you for joining us for What Do Gen Y and Gen X Want from our shows. You can check back on tsnn.com/webinars. I think there's a slash in there. My eyesight isn't very good. For the recording of this session. And thank you to our sponsors, MCCA, Advantage Boston, and OnStream Media. So thanks all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That does conclude today's webinar. We thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect your lines and have a great day.